another point that's interesting that I wanted to ask a bit more about before we talk about futuristic engineering and alien civilizations is this idea that a lot of other exoplanetary researchers shy away from talk of aliens. And I've had Avi Loeb on the show, and he's very interested in these questions. But I've also heard other physicists and astrophysicists behind his back talk about how, oh, I wish he wouldn't do this. It's so bad for the field. And what this makes me wonder is, I'm not asking for a commentary on Avi Loeb, but how you think a scientist such as yourself should go about the research into aliens and possible intelligent life in a way that's scientifically responsible.
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is a topic which is very seductive and easy to get drawn into the sensationalism of it all, because it's the ultimate scientific discovery, right? So even, I think, any question in science, trying to understand the origin of the universe and the nature of dark energy, dark matter, all of those are crucial, massive questions in science. But at least in my opinion, I think the discovery of an alien civilization would be the absolute ultimate, Nobel Prize, like the Nobel Prize cubed. That would be what that would be.
The question whether or not we're alone is just one of the biggest questions. So it's crazy to me that it should be off the table, as it's just a matter of how to go about it.
I think the reason why a lot of scientists are cautious about it, and I don't want to speak as if there's a uniform position on this, because of course there's diversity of views amongst my colleagues. There are certainly many colleagues who shy away from the question, as I initially said. I think that's true. And there are many, like Avi, who embrace it wholeheartedly. But I think the reason why some folks have a resistance to it is because of the number of burns we've had in the past.
Burns?
So there have been numerous false starts, false claims of alien life. And you can go back all the way back to sort of the 19th century. You had Percival Lowell, who was a very famous astronomer. He was first an industrialist, almost like a sort of Elon Musk type character of his time. And then he got fascinated by space and astronomy. He actually built his own observatory in Arizona. It's called the Lowell Observatory. Still runs today, and lots of tourists go there. And if you're in Arizona, you should go visit it. It's beautiful. And he really had a passion for looking for alien life on Mars. And Mars was obviously the nearest world that we were starting to get these wonderful images from refracting telescopes at the time. So he noticed a couple of things. He noticed there seemed to be an atmosphere. He could kind of see this almost silhouette around the planet. So he thought, okay, it's got an atmosphere. It's about the same size of the Earth, more or less. It's about half the size, but within the right ballpark. He noticed it had polar ice caps, which is true. So it has water, therefore, not liquid water, but it has a source of H2O. And so he started to think that this really could be a place where life could exist. And he became convinced of it. And I did a video about it on my channel a while back, and there was a quote, I'm probably going to misquote this a little bit, but he said something like, the probability that Mars has life is as certain as gravitation, the laws of gravitation. So he was just, even before he had any evidence, he was so convinced that life was an inevitable byproduct of natural processes that Mars has to have life on it. In fact, has to have a civilization on it. And that's dangerous, because then you've got experimenter's bias. When you think you know the answer to an experiment before you've done the experiment, you're only going to sort of have this confirmation cycle where you start to see what you want to see. And indeed, that's what happened. He saw these canal systems. He thought there were canal systems on Mars, and started to write about that. And for a good decade, a lot of the world thought that there was a Martian civilization that built canals. And of course, he was seeing a reflection of humanity's own technology development, because of course canal systems were being built across the US at the time. So he thought of this as the inevitable thing. And so if you look at modern astronomers, they often say, okay, solar panels, we're building solar panels everywhere. So other planets will surely be covered with solar panels. And I just think we have to be careful with that, because we've seen that with Lowell, that when you take a reflection of what we're doing now and project it onto other planets, it's kind of laughable. The idea of a canal civilization just seems silly now. And I think whatever technology we have now will similarly be kind of laughable in the future. So I think this is just one example, but there's been Martian meteorites. There's the Alan Hills meteorite, and Bill Clinton in the 90s, I think it was like 1992 or 3, stood on the White House lawn and presented evidence of alien life on Mars again. that evidence ended up being highly challenged and criticized by the community and is not really considered legitimate anymore. You have Venusian phosphine just in the last few years. That was a big news story that was thought to be life. Of course, there's Oumuamua that Avi Loeb's been writing about, claiming that this interstellar asteroid could be a spaceship. And, that, I guess we haven't got convincing evidence against that, but by and large, the community do not favor that hypothesis. So there have been many, many, many instances of someone crying wolf, I would say, at this point. And so the community is nervous about it because you can get laughed at. And, that has happened to many of these astronomers that I've mentioned. They've been kind of ridiculed for that activity. And that's tragic, I think, when that happens, because SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, SETI, has for a long time had this giggle factor element that you say to someone, I'm looking for alien life with radio telescopes or whatever method you're using, and astronomers, scientists will kind of laugh at you and say, oh, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't that cute? Why don't you do some real science? Why don't you study cosmology or something? And that's really dangerous because it turns great minds, great young thinkers away from this really important intellectual activity. So there has been this tendency, this dangerous tendency to laugh at SETI, and SETI has been working really hard over the last 5 decades, 6 decades to build a very credible research program. And I think now it has lost that giggle factor largely, which is great. But it's always easy to slip back into it, that you start making claims that X, Y, or Z could be aliens. And that's easy, right? Because aliens is infinitely flexible. It can explain everything. Any new observation I present to you, it's got off the gaps. I can always just say, aliens did it. It has unbounded
Can you give me an example
capability.
of what you mean by this?
Let's say a good example would be pulsars, actually. So when pulsars were first detected, these are the collapsed remnants of massive stars. Very massive stars, when they end their life, the sun will not do this, it's not massive enough, but they can collapse either into a black hole or a neutron star. A neutron star is sort of not quite massive enough to go all the way to a black hole. A neutron star is basically a giant atomic nucleus, essentially. It's just you've collapsed all the way down so that you've overwhelmed electron degeneracy pressure, and you've just really got something bound by the strong force, essentially, and gravitation. So at this point, these stars can rotate and then have very strong magnetic fields, and it's like a lighthouse of these radio waves passing across the sky. And so when these were first detected by Jocelyn Bell in the late 60s, I think it was, they were actually first called LGM1, Little Green Man 1. And that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it did precisely match the kind of signature people anticipated an alien civilization might produce, which would be a strictly periodic, rapid, high-powered radio signal directed towards the Earth. And that's what this signal looked like. And it was very difficult to imagine what else it could be at the time except for aliens, because there wasn't a real theory of pulsars at the time. So that was an example where the astronomers were pretty careful, and I think this LGM1 was sort of more of an internal joke rather than something they seriously pushed out to the public. But it was a great example of where when you first saw that, you have 2 explanations you can invoke. You could say it's aliens, because aliens can explain anything, really. Or you can do the hard work of trying to predict what physical processes could manifest this signal. And the same thing happened not that long ago with fast radio bursts. Fast radio bursts were, again, another strange radio signal that was detected about the last decade or so. Very high-powered, very narrow frequency radio signal was coming from extragalactic sources, actually, coming from outside the galaxy. And those, again, when they first were announced, some astronomers actually suggested this could be an alien signature of some kind. But now we think we have other mechanisms which we can explain it. And that tends to happen very frequently. Whenever something new comes along, maybe we don't initially have an explanation for it. And so aliens is just right there, just ready to go. Same with like UFOs or UAPs. It's just always there, ready to go. But if you do a bit of intellectual hard work, you can usually find some other explanation. And then you can then test those hypotheses, do more work on them. And, certainly historically so far, all of those cases have turned out to be natural, spurious events rather than the real article. And that doesn't mean aliens aren't out there. There probably still is a great chance of us one day detecting them. But we do have to be very, very cautious because we've been burnt so many times. And I think this is the trepidation that a lot of my colleagues have.